Hello, my name is Adrian Houston. I'm a former tax inspector and today I'm going to talk about the autumn 2009 tax amnesty. Now let me start by saying that when HMRC announced this tax amnesty, they won't call it a tax amnesty. They will probably call it a new disclosure opportunity. This follows from a similar initiative which was in 2007. That time it had a different three-word name. It was called the Offshore Disclosure Facility. Let's cut to the chase. What are they for? Quite simply, these are for you and anyone else to declare income from overseas investments which you haven't declared before. In 2007, this meant that the government was able to rake in £400 million that otherwise they might not have seen. So you can see in the present climate it's very attractive for the government to get their hands on some relatively easy money. The autumn 2009 new disclosure opportunity has yet to be officially launched, but it would be expected that it will follow much along the same lines as the 2007 one. So what we will do is we will look at what happened in 2007 so that you can get an idea as to whether this may be of relevance to you or your friends and relatives. In 2007, the Offshore Disclosure Facility was launched and gave people a window of a couple of months in which to register their interest. That did not require them to follow through, and for example some people, when they checked in detail, maybe found they didn't have anything to declare. But if you did have something to declare, then once you'd registered, you had another few months, perhaps almost 6 months, in which to make your declaration to HMRC. What was done was that you, or your tax advisor if you had one, would have prepared a summary sheet for the revenue which showed the amount of tax that they were owed from the various sorts of income that you were now confessing to. The tax that you owed was then worked out, and that was done by flicking through your tax papers for the year and working out where you have 40% taxpayer or 22%, and did the income push you up into 40%, that sort of thing. So the tax was worked out for each of the past 20 years, and then interest was calculated. HMRC provided simple tables that allowed you to say that the interest from 1995-96 was the amount of tax times a given figure. And finally you added the penalty percentage. That's really the revenue slap on the wrists because you haven't told them about your income at the time you originally should have. And in the 2007 initiative this was a flat 10%, which was a very good deal because, as anyone who's been through a tax investigation could tell you, the penalties typically levied are in the range 20 to 50%. The revenue can charge a lot more, but they all depend on the size and seriousness of the offence and the extent to which you cooperate with the revenue. But in 2007 it was a flat 10%. There is speculation that in 2009 the percentage penalty may be higher. I can't see it being more than 20%, but we may find that it is maybe 15 or 20%. Or they may just stick with 10% and be glad simply to get the money in. Now, what sort of income is likely to be declared through the new disclosure opportunity? I would say there are probably three main types of income. One is income which has been generated from offshore bank deposits. Very common, money held in Jersey, the Isle of Man, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Liechtenstein. I've seen it all. So, offshore bank deposits. The second thing would be offshore investment, such as property. So if you've got a house in Spain that you let out from time to time, then the income from it needs to be declared in the UK. And thirdly would be a catch-all for other offshore investments. These could be complicated unit trust arrangements, bonds, policies, all sorts of things, and they were entered into with a view to reducing your UK tax exposure, but they don't legally do that. And the disclosure opportunity will allow you to admit that there is tax that needs to be paid in order for you to set the record straight. The system in 2007 meant that once you worked out all these numbers, you put them on a simplified, streamlined form with a little brief narrative as to how the errors came about, and you sent this form to the Revenue, online or on paper, with your money. And for the vast majority of cases, that is it. A few weeks later, HMRC wrote to you and said, we accept your offer to pay this amount of money, and basically the case is closed. I handled a lot of these cases, and only in a couple of them did we have some fairly trivial queries. So this is definitely an initiative that you should seize on if you have money offshore that you haven't declared for tax purposes. I would add that if you've got deposits offshore, you may have not declared the interest, but you should also think about how did the money get there in the first place. Because quite often this was money that was, shall we call it, hot money before that point. Maybe some income you hadn't declared from business, or a capital gain on sale of a rental property, and you just stuffed the money offshore because somebody told you the taxman wouldn't find it. So if there was tax due on the money before it even left the UK, that needs to be added into the figures as well. So it could cost a tidy sum, but you will be able to sleep in your bed at night afterwards. What if someone knows about the disclosure opportunity but doesn't do anything? Say, for example, they just think, I think the Revenue doesn't know about me. Well, for them, they have the high jump coming. I certainly have dealt with people who failed to take advantage of the disclosure opportunity and then found themselves at the centre of a very serious tax investigation, and a much more expensive one too. But the other thing that's coming, subject to being passed through Parliament, is the government has said they want to name and shame tax defaulters. This is going to come about after the disclosure opportunity, and where the tax lost or potentially lost to the government was more than £25,000. So for the first time in the UK, we may see tax defaulters being publicised. Now, that would make for some interesting conversations down the golf club, wouldn't it? Did you see what he was doing? Did you see how much she got away with? So that will be a very interesting piece of legislation if they get it through Parliament. There is a precedent for it. Other countries do it. Our closest neighbour, the Republic of Ireland, has been doing this since the 1980s. And there's a lot of chat around the place about the latest set of figures that have come out. And a guy down the road who's just been found guilty of failing to declare £200,000. So naming and shaming in public is a possibility if you fail to take advantage of the disclosure opportunity. And of course, even more scary is the prospect of prosecution. People do get prosecuted by the Revenue, and the Revenue has said they're going to get tough with this offshore money that isn't declared. Tax prosecution is not nice, and many a tax defaulter has ended up in prison. I've been in court and seen them go down myself, and it's not pleasant. It may be seen as a white-collar crime, but it doesn't make any difference if you're behind bars. So, if you or your friends have money offshore that you haven't declared to HMRC, when the new disclosure opportunity comes around in autumn 2009, you should look seriously at it. And if it applies to you, avail of it. Because that way you can write the record, have very little risk of a further tax investigation, and simply get on with your life. Thank you.